going to show you the basics of how I negotiate over $360,000 off and $10,000 in closing costs from this home in just one day of negotiations. Here's the twist. As sweet as this property looks, a closer look reveals a lot of things wrong, which actually is a good thing, huh? Watch to the end to see why and how much it'll cost me to make this place right and how much I think it'll be worth when I'm done. So as many of you know, I'm always on the search for the next great property, except I'm always looking for something a bit different. Unique is a word that I use a lot to describe what I'm generally looking for. Well, in my last video, go back and watch it, I found 3 strong contenders for our next higher end vacation rental. Now, we don't want to do the basic STR stuff anymore. Money isn't there, and high quality and unique has much greater returns. And this is the place that we ended up getting. However, within 15 minutes of arriving at the property, I knew we were in for a wild ride. Doing this for 18 years, you can start to see through construction BS pretty quickly. Now, there are 5 stages to the basics of my negotiation process that can help you with your next purchase. Even before I put in an offer, is I run the numbers, always, on this property to see what I call intrinsic value, or how much the property would be worth to me once I do my strategic equity investments and I stabilize cash flows. Now, you can download the spreadsheet that I use for free and play with it and see how and if it can help you. Now, I've used this spreadsheet thousands of times to assess my deals and help my members work through their own properties. Just go to kaiandrew.com and go to the download section. If you don't see an email from me with the spreadsheet link, that means it just got caught up in your spam filter. Now, in the first phase, it's a lot of research and talking with my boots on the ground. In this case, it's my real estate agent. Now, we pour through comps in the area, acreage size, and price per square footage so I can calculate a fair market value. I also factor in how much I want the property and its potential based off of all of my previous homework. Now, when I first saw this place, when it popped up on Zillow, it grabbed my attention right away, which I knew it meant it would grab a lot of other people's attentions too. And it showed with it being only listed for a single day with thousands of views and hundreds of saves. I knew I had to move fast and at least get an accepted offer so I can get into the feasibility phase. So I called my agent and asked him to head over and check out the property for me.
It's definitely one of a kind place. That's really cool. I mean, really cool. And I definitely say it's worth north of $1 million. The seller's a little bit of a bind though, with the market turning. But the seller's agent is saying that it's a no-go for any offer under $1 million.
Okay, let's put in a 1.05 offer with 10 days due diligence and like $1,000 holding fee. What that means is if I walk away from the deal, they get to keep my $1,000. Otherwise, it's credited towards the purchase price. Now, at this point, I knew there was pressure on the seller because interest rates were rising so quickly. And at that price point, he really needed to sell this place. That's why I felt confident with my initial offer, which he accepted. Now, I personally always like to walk through a property myself. You should too, or in the least have a trusted contractor take a look at it. It cost me $300 to book the flight and a day's worth of work. Definitely worth my time. Now, not only do I want to look for quality issues, redesign costs, but I'm looking at the potential of monetizing the property too. Now, before I flew out, I also scheduled a full inspection team. I personally like to be on site at the same time as the inspectors. Now, typically, inspectors don't normally like to have buyers on site while they're there, but I generally know what I'm looking for. I touch base with them real quickly and then I get out of their way. Now, we spent several hours going through the home, top to bottom, turning everything on, testing everything, and then looking at every nook and cranny. Now, here are the main areas I always start off looking at that helps with major negotiations like this one, especially on older homes that have been flipped. First, roof and penetration. So this is windows, doors, venting, pipes, exhaust vents, anything that goes through the house, holes in the house. A way of putting it. Second is electrical panel. Don't just open up the panel, literally unscrew the front, pull it off, and look behind it. You'll see something like this. Hopefully it looks like this. And then third is the plumbing system. Now this is gonna be a little bit more challenging, but once you understand, or if you have a plumber or contractor there with you, once you start looking underneath cabinets, inside bathrooms, and looking at venting systems, you'll get a good idea of what's happening. Fourth is the HVAC and air system. So whether it's a heat pump, it's a central unit, dehumidifier, anything like that, definitely something that I always look at. And then last and not least is the foundation and or the basement. But even as thorough as inspectors can be, here's the reason why I flew out to do this with them. Inspectors are not always builders and they don't catch everything, like how flashing should be done or the proper way of siding a home. These are things that I caught that were overlooked, which are substantial concerns. Now, there are too many issues to list out here, but the key things that I found while I was there was, first, there is no evidence of plumbing vents for the entire home. The drainage of your plumbing works a lot lot like a straw. If you want your water to flow, you have to have the top of the straw open. If you close it off, the water just stays in the straw, in this case, the drain. Second, the electrical is a hot heap of garbage and 100% DIY'd by a non-electrician. You just can tell after a number of years what is done by a professional and what's done by an absolute amateur who doesn't know what they're doing. Many of the outlets and switches didn't even work properly. Third was the roofing, flashing, and siding were all done incorrectly and will need to be completely redone because there's actually water leaking into the home as we speak. And then fourth is the overall quality of the craftsmanship of the cabinets, doors, trim, windows. They're just bad. They use different shades of white, so everything's a different color, and half the doors and drawers are not aligned properly, so they don't close or even can close. Long story short, this is perhaps one of the worst high-end flips I've seen. I mean, just the window and door package alone is $75,000. The tile flooring had to be around $25,000 to $30,000, so I know they're spending a good amount of money on the flip. The execution is just bad. But bad is good. It means there's room to negotiate. And that's why I was very keen on asking the inspector to put everything into the report. I even kindly asked him to be precise and elevate the seriousness of the shoddy construction in the report itself. We even paid a little bit extra to have the well water tested and a scope placed down the kitchen plumbing, which ultimately really helped us out because the well water came back with a bunch of bacteria and that there was a belly in the kitchen plumbing, which means that the pipe was holding water. Now, why am I so concerned about having all of this documented? This leads to the renegotiation stage. Now, a lot of people will just use what their inspector tells them or what they noticed during a walkthrough to try to renegotiate. It means a lot more coming from an official inspection report. Now, here's the thing. In real estate, there's something called disclosure. This is where the agent and seller have to tell buyers anything and everything that they know about the property, including if it's been haunted or anybody has died there. True story. Now, if they are found to have been hiding something that they were aware of from buyers, it's a major issue and they can be taken to court and sued, and the agent can lose their license as well. It's a really big deal. So you don't often see people intentionally not disclosing things, especially major things. So my agent drafted a fairly serious email outlining all the issues found in the walkthrough and the inspection. We did not put in a new offer yet. We just wanted to give them some time to read the email and really digest it, which worked out really well. They eventually came back to us and verbally said that they'd settle for $950, but no lower. We'd even put in an offer and they dropped it $100,000. But what I did next was ask my agent to send them the actual inspection report. This is the key because it forces their hand and they must disclose a report to all future potential buyers. And I knew the report was bad enough that most buyers wouldn't want to even touch this home. Their only chance was if they found another builder investor type that was interested, someone like me. I then asked my agent to submit a final offer for $840,000 and $10,000 towards closing. Now, to be honest, my agent was skeptical that they'd even accept and asked if I was ready to walk away because they've already said that they wouldn't go lower than $950. I said, yeah, I'm ready to walk away. And sure enough, a day later, hours before expiration of our contract, they accepted. Now, a thing that I didn't mention is that we were able to figure out the seller's basis on the property. Now, this is incredibly important so you can estimate how much you have room for negotiations, or may not have. A cost basis is just essentially how much someone is into a property for. Most of this information your agent can get for you. With some very basic digging, we know that they bought the property about a year ago for $425,000. We also have access to the before photos when they first listed it, and obviously the after photos with the current listing. So we can see where they put their remodel money, which is nice when you're an experienced contractor or you have a contracting team you can run things by. Well, we estimated that they spent in the $250,000 range. Then there's the holding cost of the loan itself, which we believe is a hard money loan based on the conversation with the seller's agent. And assuming a 10% loan, they've spent $42,500 on interest in that last year. So let's say that they're all in, their cost basis is about $750,000 with closing costs, taxes, insurance fees, and all the miscellaneous stuff. I also know that they don't get to keep all of my $840,000 offer after closing costs and realtor fees. Now, Zillow actually has a really neat little calculator that is very close to what you get to keep. And you can run the calculations here. So if I put $840,000 in here, you can see that their net proceeds are going to be about $770,000, which means if they spent at $750,000 so far, that's only $20,000 in profit. After taxes, you're looking at it closer to maybe $12,000. This is essentially a break-even deal for them. And I know that because the level of work that they did, it's very clear that they just gave up or didn't care anymore. They literally tried to sell this unfinished. They haven't even finished the flip yet. So I'm gonna go out on a limb that they just want to get out from under this project. And I was right. And now we're officially under contract and I gave them a $20,000 deposit. If for any reason that the deal doesn't go through, they get to keep my $20,000, which is the next problem when buying unique properties. You have to be able to get homes appraised and be deemed marketable. It's twofer. We had the property appraised just fine, but the bank we were using, which was Wells Fargo, backed out literally 5 days before closing. And it was like a Thursday too. Now, I very rarely speak poorly, if ever, of anyone on my channel, but I no longer do business with Wells Fargo. I've been a customer of theirs for 15 years with multiple loans, business and brokerage accounts. In short, I've put a lot of money through them. Without warning, 5 days prior to this closing, they tell me that they decided to not take on the loan because the underwriters felt like the property was, in quotation, not marketable due to the uniqueness of the property. Now, this normally isn't a big issue if they had told me immediately once we started the loan process, not 5 days before closing. Thus, I do not recommend Wells Fargo and I no longer work with them. There was an option to make this a portfolio loan, but they wouldn't even accommodate that request despite our lengthy relationship. Screw you, Wells Fargo. So if I didn't find a lender in the next 5 days, I lose the property and the $20,000 deposit. That was the new urgency. However, long story short, after quickly reaching out to my network of folks, including Rob Built, thank you, Rob, I connected with several other banks and thankfully we were able to find a great local bank in Texas that took on the loan and was able to finance the deal and we were able to close through a portfolio loan. Lesson now to everyone out there, including future Kai, always have multiple backup lenders ready to go, even if your primary lender that you've done 15 years of business with says that they can close with you. Don't trust the bank, especially a bank like Wells Fargo. Now the big question is this all going to be worth it? Well, yes. Those 4 key issues, without boring you with the details of what's going to cost me, is going to be in the range between $50,000 to $75,000 to correct. Now, depending how bad it is, once we start opening up the walls and ripping up the slab foundation to look at the plumbing, but it's all fixable. That would put my basis around $900,000. Conservatively, based off of the appraisal report and just knowing the market, it should be worth right around the $1.1 million range, which still gives me plenty of equity, about $200,000 in equity in about 2 or 3 months worth of work. Not too bad. However, you guys know me. I don't like to do things just average. We're gutting this place and we're doing the whole thing right, which will be more likely to cost me around the $200,000 range. So my new cost basis will be closer to $1.05 million. But I think that the place could be valued as high as $1.5 million, giving me between $400,000 to $500,000 in equity. And we haven't even started talking about rental income yet. We're looking at an average daily rate of about $350 to $500 a night for this place, which would give us between $10,000 and $15,000 in monthly revenues. This property breaks even at less than $5,000 a month. And this doesn't even include the other ways that we'll be able to land hack the property to create even more income streams. Now go watch the previous video on how I selected this place and see the tour of the home yourself.